For decades, a silent force has shaped wars, alliances, collapses, and global wealth. It moved without borders, without a flag, and without a public face. Yet every nation felt its shadow. Only a handful of powerful figures knew the truth. A hidden web of secret agreements that bound the world's economy to a single currency. Today, the veil finally lifts. What you are about to discover is not a theory, not a rumor, but the forgotten architecture of global power, designed in darkness, protected by silence, and now exposed for the first time. In the early 1970s, the world was facing an unprecedented crisis. Oil prices surged, currencies collapsed, and global markets trembled. Behind closed doors, a small circle of strategists realized that whoever controlled the flow of oil would secretly control the entire economic system. This insight led to a quiet but historic meeting between U.S. officials and key Middle Eastern leaders. No cameras, no records, no public statements. The deal was simple but revolutionary. Oil would be sold exclusively in U.S. dollars, and in return, protection and influence would be guaranteed. This unspoken pact created a new world order, one not built on armies or empires, but on energy and currency. A silent empire was born, hidden in plain sight, yet felt in every nation's economy. It was the beginning of the petrodollar age. Oil was more than fuel. It was the bloodstream of modern civilization. Every factory, every ship, every economic engine depended on it. As the world industrialized, nations realized that control over oil meant control over growth itself. This dependency transformed oil from a commodity into a weapon of influence. The petrodollar system amplified this effect. Since countries needed dollars to buy oil, they were indirectly forced to support the U.S. financial order. Even nations opposed to American policy were trapped. Without dollars, their economies would suffocate. This created a paradoxical world where enemies and allies alike kept the system alive. Oil was no longer simply an energy source. It became the silent chain binding global economies to a single currency. When the United States approached Saudi Arabia with the proposal, the kingdom understood the magnitude of the moment. The world's largest oil producer held the financial future of nations in its hands. In a discreet agreement, the Saudis accepted the exclusive use of the US dollar for oil sales, and in return, they would receive military protection, economic cooperation, and political backing. What made the deal extraordinary was its secrecy. No formal treaty, no signatures released to the public. The pact wasn't written in books, it was written in interests. This single handshake bound global energy markets to a currency that only one nation could print at will. Overnight, the US gained an invisible advantage. Every country needing oil now needed dollars, and every dollar passed through American financial channels. A silent financial empire emerged, powered not by force, but by dependency. Once the petrodollar mechanism was in place, nations around the world found themselves in a financial trap they could not escape. Every country needed oil, and every barrel required dollars. To obtain these dollars, nations borrowed, traded, or relied on US-controlled banking networks. The more they tried to break free, the deeper they sank into dependence. International debt soared, global institutions favored the dollar, and developing countries had no choice but to play by rules they did not write. The trap was subtle yet absolute. Even the strongest economies relied on dollar reserves for stability. The petrodollar became the silent oxygen of the global system, taken for granted, unnoticed, yet indispensable for survival. Many global conflicts that seemed political or ideological were, at their core, battles to protect the petrodollar system. When nations attempted to price oil in other currencies, tensions suddenly escalated. Leaders were overthrown, sanctions appeared overnight, and freedom missions became suspiciously frequent. Though never stated publicly, energy routes and currency loyalty determined who was punished and who was protected. The world believed these were wars of democracy or security, but behind the curtain, the real objective was maintaining the dollar's grip on global energy. It was the invisible rule that shaped decades of foreign policy. Follow the petrodollar system or face consequences. One of the most ingenious parts of the system was petrodollar recycling. Oil-rich nations earned billions in dollars, but they couldn't keep all that money idle. Instead, they reinvested it into U.S. banks, bonds, and markets, fueling American growth. The U.S. would then lend these same dollars to developing nations, who used them to buy more oil, creating a perfect loop of dependency. The system looked like global cooperation, but beneath the surface it was a financial machine ensuring that every dollar ultimately returned to the same place. It was elegant, quiet, and astonishingly effective. For decades, the petrodollar system operated flawlessly, but no empire, visible or invisible, is eternal. As new global powers emerged, some nations questioned why the world's economy should depend on one currency. Rising energy producers began exploring alternatives. Technology reduced the dominance of oil, and digital currency experiments threatened the old financial order. The cracks were small at first, but their presence signaled a long-awaited shift. A system built in secrecy was facing challenges in a world that demanded transparency. Some countries dared to confront the petrodollar structure directly. They proposed selling oil in euros, gold, or regional currencies. These attempts were met with swift retaliation, economic pressure, political destabilization, or global isolation. The message was clear. Leaving the system was allowed only in theory, never in practice. Yet each challenge weakened the illusion of invincibility. As more nations questioned the dollar's dominance, the world began to imagine a future where oil was no longer tied to a single currency. As digital payment systems, blockchain networks, and central bank digital currencies advanced, the petrodollar faced a new kind of rival, one not tied to oil, banks, or geography. For the first time, nations could bypass traditional financial pathways entirely. Transactions no longer required physical dollars or U.S. monitoring. This innovation threatened the core of the system. Control. If currencies could move freely without passing through American institutions, the petrodollar would lose its strategic power. The digital threat wasn't loud, but it was inevitable, a quiet storm gathering strength. A subtle but powerful transformation began as countries entered new trade agreements without using the dollar. These deals seemed harmless at first: regional partnerships, energy exchanges, local currency settlements. But beneath the surface, they marked a historic departure from a system that dominated for 50 years. Each agreement weakened the petrodollar's global reach. Countries no longer wanted to be financially vulnerable to decisions made in Washington. Independence became the new currency, and the world slowly drifted toward a multipolar financial order. History shows that empires rarely fall from military defeat. They fall when their financial engines collapse. Rome lost its power when its currency inflated beyond use. Britain declined when the pound could no longer support its global commitments. The petrodollar system, once untouchable, now showed signs of stress. Inflation, debt, and geopolitical tension revealed the limits of endless printing. When a currency loses the world's trust, power slips silently away. And for the first time in half a century, the world began to ask, what happens when the dollar is no longer the center of global trade? The world is entering a phase where no single nation will control global energy or finance. Multiple currencies, digital ecosystems, and regional power blocks are emerging. The fall of the petrodollar will not be sudden. It will be a quiet transition, felt first in trade, then in banking, and eventually in politics. The true question is not whether the system will end, But what will replace it? A new economic order is forming in real time, and for the first time since the 1970s, global power is no longer guaranteed to one currency. The future is uncertain, but one truth remains. The age of hidden agreements is ending, and the world is waking up.